This story will be a perfect depiction of how fast young boys can get involved in the deepest layer of the underworld. Their desire to make a lot of money quickly blinds them to the terrible things they are recruited to do and the big risks they are taking with their own lives. In this particular story, no one could have envisioned what would happen next after he got recruited by the Netherlands' most vicious kingpin. This is the story of Zakaria A, also known as the Shooting Pizza Courier. Zakaria A was born in 1993 and grew up on the Dommeringdreeft in Utrecht, a neighbourhood in Utrecht. It is a neighbourhood that is known for its rough edges and criminality. He lived there with his mother and his parents were divorced. Zakaria would spend most of his time outside on the streets with his friends and other young guys who lived in the neighbourhood. As these guys did not have much to do throughout the day, they just talked, joked, and sometimes caused a nuisance with each other in the area. When he wasn't hanging on the streets, Zakaria drove on his scooter through Utrecht to deliver pizzas for a pizzeria he lived close by. That's how he made some money, but making somewhere around €10 an hour was not enough for Zakaria to fund the lifestyle he eyed for himself. To fund this lifestyle he wanted, he decided to buy and sell small amounts of drugs, mainly coke and pills. In a sense, he was just a regular neighbourhood dealer. A few grams here, a few grams there, nothing too big. As you probably know, this is nearly the lowest step on the ladder of the drug smuggling business. By hanging out in the neighbourhood so much, he managed to come in contact with other fellow young and aspiring criminals. They started to form a group and helped each other climbing up the criminal ladder. On the 4th of July 2014, the group had a fallout. The incident that would follow is where Zakaria eventually got his name from. The then 21-year-old Zakaria had some problems with Khalid O about a small batch of drugs. At first, the men tried to be cordial and resolve their problems via messages and calls. None of that helped though, and it only seemed to rise the tensions between them. The two decided to meet up for a face-to-face conversation on a parking lot near a flat located at the Atlasdreeft in Utrecht. Zakaria felt threatened and decided to bring a loaded firearm to the meeting, just in case. He drove to the parking lot on the delivery scooter of his job, and at arrival was immediately confronted by Khalid. The two started cursing each other out, which led to pushing and shoving. All of a sudden, Zakaria grabbed his firearm and fired several shots, after which he drove off on his delivery scooter. This incident got him the nickname the Shooting Pizza Delivery Guy. Police were alarmed by residents that they heard shots being fired. Some residents saw the altercation and informed the police that arrived on the scene. However, they all stated something different. Pair that with the fact that the police didn't find any suspects and no one admitted themselves to the hospital. They all in all did not have anything to investigate. That was at least the case until a day later, when Khalid decided to go to the police himself and told them that he was the one that got shot at last night. On the 13th of July 2014, 9 days after the incident, Zakaria was arrested as the shooter. According to Khalid, he hit Zakaria twice on the head after Zakaria fired at him. Zakaria firmly denied this and said that he was struck with something sharp on the head multiple times before firing a shot. He claimed self-defense, after which he showed the injuries on his head and face. Police could not really get it clear what had happened exactly and if Zakaria had fired directly at Khalid or just in the air as a warning shot. It wasn't until they heard taped phone conversations between the two men days after the incident that gave them some clarity. Zakaria and Khalid could be heard discussing how they would match their stories to come up with one story that wouldn't make any of them look bad, which is very interesting. Why would Khalid go to the police in the first place and then discuss with Zakaria how to match their story? In another tapped conversation, Khalid could be heard telling a woman that Zakaria only fired into the air and did not aim at him. Prosecutors had a hard time building a substantial case on these diverse and contradictory statements and decided to give Khalid a 2-month sentence and Zakaria a 1-year sentence, with a conditional 6 months for the shooting. I guess they could have better resolved their issues behind closed doors after all. Zakaria was released at the far end of 2015. After serving his time, he was often seen with Anwar B. Anwar was a good friend of him, and he was involved in the underworld as well. However, just like Zakaria, Anwar wasn't a big player and only had some small counts on his record. The two would go on to hang out in the streets, in the car or in the Platinum Lounge. For some of you, the Platinum Lounge may ring a bell if you've watched some of my other content. Applaud yourself because that means you are very sharp. The Platinum Lounge was a shisha cafe, but also served as a meeting place for young and aspiring criminals to potentially land themselves a job in the underworld and make some big money. The Platinum Lounge changed ownership often, but it was once owned by Mohamed Razouki, brother of Said Razouki, who in his turn was the right-hand man of Ridouan Taghi. Mind you, at this point in time at the far end of 2015, these men were relatively unknown to everyone. Dutch police had the suspicion that Ridouan ordered the hits and that Said would be the man to make sure they were done. Their names had been connected to several hits in the underworld already, but they lacked concrete evidence. Back to Zakaria and the Platinum Lounge. Well, Zakaria was one of these young aspiring criminals who wanted to get involved in the more serious work. On the 22nd of June 2016, around 9:50, a man named Ranko Skecic was removed off the playing field in Utrecht. Ranko was a criminal that was about to provide the police a statement regarding an investigation into Ridouan Taghi. What did this all have to do with Zakaria? Well, more than a year later, on the 10th of May 2017, Zakaria was arrested for his alleged involvement in the hit on Ranko Skecic. Did the Shooting Pizza Courier get himself recruited for a job while in the Platinum Lounge? Police received an anonymous tip after the hit on Ranko that Zakaria was involved. They decided to tap Zakaria's phone for further investigation and eventually had enough information to raid his home. During the raid, police found 2 firearms, trackers, and several PGP phones. They also linked the scooter that was used during the hit as a getaway vehicle to him. Zakaria simply said that he stashed the firearms for someone else and that he had the scooter stashed too for a different person. Luckily for him, prosecutors weren't able to come up with the necessary evidence to prove Zakaria was involved in the hit, and he walked away a free man for that case. However, he did get sentenced to 3 months in prison for the possession of a firearm, and he was still on probation for the shooting of Khalid. He had to serve the 6 months remainder too. All in all, just 9 months to serve. Word on the street was that Zakaria got lucky and got away with one. It's no secret that the underworld is heavily intertwined with the world of rap, and apparently Zakaria was making his connections. On the 28th of October 2016, a disguised Zakaria can be seen in one of the Netherlands' biggest rappers called Leip. He is seen with a Kalashnikov held over his shoulder and in one scene points his middle finger up. Well, by now, 7 years after the release of that clip, it already has over 24.6 million views. Back to his prison sentence. While serving his 9 months, Zakaria received an unexpected visit on the brink of his release. On the 28th of March, he was arrested in his cell for the suspicion of being the shooter in the hit on crime reporter Martin Kok. On the 8th of December 2016, Martin had an appointment with a man named Christopher Scotty Hughes in the Citizen M Hotel in Amsterdam. While he was having a drink in the hotel, another man entered the hotel as well. This man walked towards the bar and took a seat from which he could keep an open eye on Martin and Scotty. After a few minutes, the man left the hotel and stood outside, eyeing the entrance of the hotel. Around 7:30 in the evening, Martin exited the hotel. Then, something unbelievable happened. CCTV showed that all of a sudden a man walks up from behind, points his weapon at Martin, and seemingly pulls the trigger. Yet, nothing happened. Did he hesitate? Or did his weapon malfunction? Martin did not notice anything, and the man ran off. Seeing that footage is so intriguing. Martin had just survived an attempt without even noticing it. Without having a clue about what had just happened, Martin stepped in his car and drove off to Boccaccio, a gentleman's club in Laren. He parked the car and went inside. The Boccaccio villa is surrounded by a forest and large gates. It only has one entrance. While he was inside, someone entered the premises by jumping over a gate and hid himself in the bushes, right in front of Martin's car. At around 11:30, CCTV footage showed Martin leaving. Martin in front, Scotty following several meters behind him. As Martin stepped inside the car and buckled up, the man came out of the bushes, and before Martin knew it, it was over for him. Despite the police arriving after just a few minutes, it was already too late, and Martin was no more. The man fled into the bushes. Was this man Zakaria? Did he get another job after Ranko? A lot of questions to be asked. What only adds to the story is that his good friend Anwar was arrested just 6 months prior to the hit on Martin, remember? The guy he used to hang out with in the Platinum Lounge. Anwar was arrested because police suspected him of placing an explosive underneath Martin's car. Fortunately for Martin, he quickly noticed the explosive and called the police. Anwar's DNA was found on the explosive, but he was still acquitted due to the lack of evidence. Was Anwar sent first to take out Martin? And did they send Zakaria after the failed attempt to finally seal the deal? On the 13th of November 2018, Zakaria was arrested once again in his cell. This time, It was for his alleged participation in Ridouan Taghi's organization that was involved in several hits among other serious crimes. Zakaria is part of an oiled hit machine that took their orders from Ridouan Taghi and Said Razouki, a prosecutor said. In court cases that followed, prosecutors could once again not prosecute Zakaria for being the shooter in the Martin Koch hit he was accused of. They had a movement expert critically look at the CCTV footage of the hit on Martin, who decided that it was Zakaria. However, Zakaria's lawyer, Jan-Han Kuipers, managed to debunk what the expert had said. Jan-Han Kuipers also said at the time of the hit, Zakaria was at his mother's home for her birthday, which she confirmed. Prosecutors saw their case crumble. However, that did not mean he was let off the hook again. Fast forward to 2022. Even though the prosecutors may not have been able to tie him to the hits and give him life, they did manage to tie him to stashing firearms and scouting targets as part of Ridouan Taghi's hit squad. Therefore, they demanded a sentence of 25 years and 8 months in prison. The final verdict will follow later this year. What do you think? Will they get Zakaria this time around, or will he escape the dance once more? As always, if you have enjoyed this video, please be sure to take a second to leave a like, a comment showing your thoughts or ideas, and subscribe to the channel.